Thank you, Professor Chia. I think that was a very stimulating description of ASEAN and exploration of its future in a world economy which is changing in a number of difficult ways. We still have maybe like 15 minutes time for question and answers, and without further ado, I would like to go to the question and answer section. I urge you to be brief in your comments so that we can perhaps have more participants in the discussion. Who wants to start? Please, the one on the back. Oh, I see Pak Janester, yeah?
Thank you. We'll be talking about how to increase the integration of our economy in the Asian context. And all of the countries in this region should be participating and getting the benefit from that. But before going to the Asian context, let's see inside. We have said that Indonesia to have a vital role. Let's see, for example, in Indonesia, in agriculture, from provinces to the other provinces, produce the same product. But you see, for example, in Java, per hectare, paddy is 5 tons per hectare. But in Kalimantan, it could be only 3 hectares. But they produce the same goods, the same products, from provinces to provinces. Where is this so-called competitive advantage? Before you go into the outside your country, you should be internally competitive. What is the government in Indonesia? Has they thought about this? So this is the kind of thing that if you say that Indonesia has a pivotal role, it should be also very specific to this role. This is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. So think about the domestic integration first, then ASEAN. Second, young people first. Pak Soli, yeah? Yes. This is a digital generation. Hey, please.
Thank you. My name is Henry, and I'm one of the University of Indonesia alumnus. Thank you for the speech from Mrs. Chia about the ASEAN. I would like to ask about the current challenges that Indonesia has today, about the coordination from our government. I see there is a lack of coordination to achieve the AEC goals. In terms of that, I would like to ask you also about whether there is a coordinator from ASEAN side, ASEAN Center, to coordinate, to evaluate the progress of the AEC currently. I agree with our President, Mr. Joko Widodo, that he has planned to create the task force in terms of the economic package, which already been 12 package has been issued today. I would like to ask about the importance of the coordination in ASEAN Center and also in Indonesian government. Because I see from news, from this paper, I've heard that our government today has challenges to implement the package, the economic package, or to achieve the AAC goals because of the redundant of the policies, many policies, and we have to deregulate the policies at the bottom level, especially for the local government. That needs support from the local government to achieve the AAC goals as well. So I would like to ask the importance of the coordination from the Asian Center part and the Indonesian government part. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a lady? I'm very concerned about gender parity nowadays. Yes, Christine.
Thank you, President. Professor Chen, it's good to see you again. My name is Christine. I'm from CSIS. You were mentioning about Indonesia's pivotal role in economic integration. How do you see Indonesia and China economic relations have progressed so far in relation to how those dynamics are influencing economic integration? Thank you.
Let's keep it there first. From Chia, 3 questions.
Let me just answer the question on coordination. I think the ASEAN Secretariat has a unit that is overseeing the implementation of the AEC at the various stages. Now, I read from the Jakarta Post recently that one of the ambassadors said that Indonesia achieved very well in the AEC, 94% versus the Indonesian versus the ASEAN average of 92%. Now, if that is the case, I said very good. But having said that, I have studied the scorecard in great detail, and I'll give you a personal example. Some years ago, I was giving a series of lectures on behalf of an international organization. So I visited Jakarta, Medan, Batam, and during the Q&A, one of the customs officials says, I think this is Batam, he says, don't blame Batam. We sent the documents to Jakarta for 2 weeks and no reply. Right? So obviously, it is a problem of internal coordination. Now, as I said, you're the biggest archipelagic nation, so you have serious transport and logistics problems. And you have a problem in implementing the national single window. If your IT is more well developed, then documents can be sent from one part of Indonesia to another without any problem at all. But you have to train the individuals to make sure that the forms are properly filled in. And that is the biggest problem. It's not just the technology, it's the training of the humans that supply the data. And it's a monumental problem. Okay? So, what do we do? I can only say, make use of your technology, but I cannot tell you that, well, you have decentralized. So therefore, regionalization has created certain economies and certain problems that the center would have different difficulties in coordinating. But given the Indonesian ingenuity and tolerance, I'm sure you will overcome the problem sooner than later. And particularly, from what I can gather from the Jakarta Post and the media, the President Jokowi seems very determined to push Indonesia into the IT age. So, as far as ASEAN is concerned, as I said, the ASEAN Secretariat has a monitoring unit that monitors very closely. Now, the scorecard, I was told, this is a problem. When your officials in Jakarta the scorecard. Have you done A, B, C, D, E? He or she can fill in for Jakarta. What does he know is happening in Ambon or Sulawesi? He doesn't know, right? So this is both the blessing and the curse of being a big archipelago. So unless you're able to communicate with all the corners of Indonesia efficiently and with speed and accuracy, this will remain a perpetual problem. Thank you. Indonesia, China. As far as I know, we're talking about economic relations or political relations. Okay, economic relations, as I understood, when the ASEAN-China FTA was implemented, it caused a lot of anguish in Indonesia because you had huge imports of cheap Chinese goods, right? And you had requested for some delays and so on. Now, I don't know whether that bought you time, but if you are going to join the TPP, it's going to be even worse, right? Because the TPP requirements are even much more stringent in ASEAN-China, right? Because TPP not only trade in goods, trade in investments, services, government procurement, state-owned enterprises, competition policy, IPR, you name it, we got it. Right? So I would say that all the ASEAN plus 1 FTAs and the RCEP are milestones, learning milestones towards eventual competition of the TPP. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Chia. Participation in international agreements is many times conceived as a way of learning. Hardy was fond of saying that we enter ASEAN as training ground for competing globally. And I think this is the meaning of trade. Trade is not exchanging mangosteen against a car. Trade is understanding what other people think about mangosteen and how we learn to master competencies that are needed to produce a competitive car. So it's learning. The essence of trade is learning. It's not just the physical exchange of the products. And I think by joining ASEAN, joining many other groupings, we can quicken the process of learning. I saw someone on this side in the back. No? Is your... Okay, please. One brief question, please.
Thank you, Professor Chisman. Professor Chia, you mentioned about AEC 2025, but all of the member of ASEAN country also joining APEC. We are facing another agreement, APEC 2020. It is relevant to talk about AEC 2025. Another side we have APEC 2030. Thank you.
Okay, APEC agreements are purely voluntary. Okay? ASEAN AEC agreements are obligatory. Right? In other words, you can disregard APEC agreements, there is no fallout. You can disregard ASEAN agreements too, there is no obvious fallout, but the fallout will come in the form of ASEAN not being able to achieve its objectives. So it is consistent for ASEAN countries to participate in APEC 2020. Now, many of the APEC programs are forerunners. You first start out, and then if it seems to work, then after that you can formalize it in terms of regional agreements. Right? Although there is one effort by APEC that didn't succeed, and that was in terms of ESLV or something like that. Let me just give you an illustration. I've been working on ASEAN for 40 years now. In the 70s and even the early 80s, I had discussed with many Indonesian scholars and officials. And you know, at that time, free trade area is a taboo, it's not agreed. And my Indonesian friends were arguing, no, we cannot open up our markets to Singapore. You are so competitive, you will overwhelm us. So I said, let's think logically. Singapore is such a tiny island with such a small population. How much can we produce to overwhelm the whole of Indonesia? Right? So sometimes the fears are irrational fears, responses. Right? But over time, Indonesia has accepted free trade, right? In goods. So you're already one step. So the next step is accept free trade in services. But now you're worried about free mobility of skilled labor. Right? It's not you. Thailand and all that. They say no. We cannot open up. We will be overwhelmed by Singaporeans who are good in English, good in engineering, etc., etc. Right? They will overwhelm us. So I always point out, how many engineers are there in Singapore? How many architects are there in Singapore? Do they really want to work in Indonesia or in Thailand? They prefer to work in Singapore where they can. They come to visit Indonesia, visit Thailand for business, and then go back again. Right? Whereas we welcome Indonesian architects, etc., ASEAN, because we are short of them. Right? We welcome them. They come, they receive training, they receive experience. After some years, they return to their home countries. Well and good. Right? They carry with them their expertise, training, and networks. And that is what makes ASEAN go round. Thank you.
Thank you. That's why details are needed. Professional mobility cannot be judged on a very general high level. It has to be profession by profession. Professors, for instance, we have professors of botany, etc., etc. So mobility depends on the very detailed categories of professors. I stop. Sorry, you can make it brief.
Thank you, Madam, for the very comprehensive presentation. There is one issue that perhaps could be impeding factor, as you presented also at one issue that we need to look at. That is regarding competition policy. My experience, when I was a fair trade commissioner in the KBPU of Indonesia, under ASEAN, Australia, New Zealand, FTA discussion or negotiation, Australia and New Zealand proposed to include competition policy as one article in the FTA agreement, as we achieved with Indonesia and Japan. But ASEAN hesitated to include them. I want to listen to Madam's opinion because Singapore has included that under US-Singapore FTA, right?
Competition.
Yeah, competition policy. How good is the chance for ASEAN? Perhaps with the leadership of Singapore to include the competition policy in the future comprehensive agreement with other countries, ASEAN with other countries, ASEAN, European Union, for instance. But including the consideration of it inside ASEAN itself, not only between ASEAN with other countries, but inside ASEAN. With the hope that ASEAN will produce a common regional agreement or rule to apply among ASEAN member countries. So we look into outside of ASEAN is fine. I agree. With the presentation that with all the benefits that we could gain. But how good is the chance for ASEAN to be more integrated so that all the member of ASEAN countries, despite of the difference of the level of economic development, could truly gain benefit that when we go outside of ASEAN. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. This is what I said at the outset, that ASEAN cannot move very fast because it has to have a consensus of 10 countries, of which Indonesia is the leader. Right? So Singapore cannot push. Right? Singapore, in its bilateral FTAs, can push very fast. But Singapore in ASEAN must move at the ASEAN pace. Right? That is recognized. Now, with regard to competition, you see, in the Singapore-US FTA, this is why Singapore has no problem in participating with the TPP, because we already had the Singapore-US FTA. It's the toughest FTA Singapore has ever signed. But because it's with a big power, with a huge market, we are prepared to make concession for concession. In the case of competition policy, you might want to know, the US was very concerned but in the dominant role of some state, what we call GLCs, government-linked companies. Singapore Airlines is a government-linked company, but it is listed on the Singapore Stock Exchange, so you can buy up the shares if you want. And Singtel, Singapore Telecoms, is a government corporation. So the US companies were lobbying their government, says, we have to make sure Singtel is not a monopoly. Right? So there is a side letter where the Singapore government guarantees to the US government that all our state-owned enterprises are run as commercial enterprises, no subsidies, no interference. And Singtel has to divest part of its shareholdings to the public. And that is what has happened. So Singtel is run as a purely commercial enterprise. Singapore Airlines is a commercial enterprise. Now, the reason why some state-owned enterprises in Singapore still survive and prosper today is because it doesn't receive any government subsidy. The government of Singapore does not believe in subsidies unless you are poor and destitute. It does not subsidize unproductive enterprises. Now, in the case of ASEAN, actually, I am not so optimistic about ASEAN. Not because the ASEAN are members of ASEAN. India is very protectionist. Right? So ASEAN will not move very far because of India. So if you think that Indonesia is worried about opening up too much, that India is even more worried. So in that sense, my sense is ASEAN will not go as far as the TPP. But if Indonesia is prepared to accept the TPP, you are definitely prepared to accept competition.
Chia, we have to end here in the interest of time. maybe a peak. We are heading towards disruptive changes. Our life is being redefined with new technology. And I think we haven't discussed this deeply enough, not only of course today we are supposed to discuss ASEAN, but even ASEAN is going to face this soon, not in a distant future. What are we going to do if most of the jobs that we occupy today are eaten up by robots? What are we going to do if a lecturer like me, an old professor, can be replaced by a virtual professor rather than human professor? What are we going to do if brains can be enhanced almost indefinitely, infinitely, by what is called prosthesis? And I think Professor Chia mentioned in one of the slides, human capital. We don't have much while anticipating these changes other than human capital accumulation. And we have to do it at a very high speed. I always say we have to attain escape velocity. I come from North Sumatra, and there we say, if you want to catch up, you have to run. Otherwise, we will be left by history. And I think the same applies to ASEAN. If we continue to look at ASEAN in a very traditional way, we are going to miss the train of the new world, the new technologies. Professor Chia, thank you very much again for the very useful presentation. And I think we need this kind of forums to remind us that ASEAN is also our making, the making of ASEAN people, and that we are responsible to carry on whatever is needed to be done in ASEAN. And of course, our Australian friends are all welcome because some of the best ASEAN economists are also live in Australia. I hope you have benefited from the presentation, from the discussion, and we will continue to do this in memory of Adi Susastro, who I think has been one of the main contributors to the way economic integration is shaped within ASEAN, together with Professor Chia and some other economists. Thank you very much again for your presence. Thank you once again. I wish you good health and continued success in working.